So we are
Far
live.
away, guys.
Cofield pretending. I love it when Cofield, who knows nothing about computers, pretends like he's trying to figure something out. He's like, I'm rebooting my computer. Nobody
I don't know.
reboots computers this day. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's
It
going to
does.
duck it out here. in a
It doesn't
second.
surprise me at all. Like I went off on him on air today about I built this studio in my office with the primary purpose of being able to do this podcast, even though I'm home every time we do it, and the radio show. And I have created Ethernet, Wi-Fi, plugs everywhere, tables, the whole bit. And every time I walk in there, this asshole brings extension cords and he brings this extension cord that's a disc that just I have everything hidden up and under the table with a recessed plug. No, extension cords all over, 3 extension cords plugged into each other all over top of the freaking table.
Duct tape.
And then he's got his laptop on there and he's like, hey, the Wi-Fi is not working. And I'm like, dude, there's Ethernet right here. Just plug right in. Oh man. I lost it on him today. I went back in there because I put in more plugs for him. So there was just plugs every way along the whole table. And I walked in and I saw an extension cord. And I'm like, how the fuck are you extending anything? So it doesn't surprise me.
Yes. Well, how are you, sir? It's been a while. It's been a few weeks. I know it's hard for you guys to soldier on and do the podcast without me. But the people were demanding, they were rioting. We had to do a podcast this week. So it's good to see you. How have you been?
Yeah, it's good. Golden Knights had a great comeback there. Down 2-1 in the third period with, I think we were down to there at the end. I'm going to say 16 skaters. We had 2 more injuries. William Carrier, and I'm pretty sure Miramonov, the rookie, was injured because he didn't come out in the third period. So 16 skaters, backup goalie, back-to-backs, 3 days and 3 games in 4 days. Score a late one, and then get the job done in overtime. So pretty awesome.
There's a couple interesting things with the Golden Knights. Now, of course, the Avs and the Golden Knights, were disappointing in the playoffs last year. Both were, well, the Avs were they thought they were going to win the cup. They got bounced by the Golden Knights. And then, hey, the Golden Knights, they were going to win the cup. They got bounced, I believe, in the very next round. I think they both had kind of disappointing starts to their season. But now the Golden Knights are kind of getting this reputation, maybe being what the Red Wings used to be, kind of this dirty, underhanded, cheating, maybe never going to get there now because they're not going to do things the right way type team. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what's on the streets?
What the fuck are you talking about?
I don't know. That's just what's I'm hearing. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on.
No. I mean, I think that they are cutthroat. I think that's their reputation.
Oh, is that what we're calling it? Okay. Yeah. All right.
That if if you don't have a good season, they'll move on from you for sure. Or even if you do have a good season, but you have a bad contract. I mean, hell, Fleury won the Vezina last year, and they moved on from him because it's a $7 million contract.
Age. Yeah, but he's Cofield's age too.
Well, yeah, and I mean, not that the Blackhawks play any sort of defense, but Fleury has had a awful start to this season. I believe he's 0-5. With a mid 800 save percentage, and I think an average of 5-something goals per game right now. It's been really bad, but I've watched most of those games, most of those goals off of highlights. The Blackhawks are really, really, really bad defensively and hang them out to dry constantly. So, but I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the moves that they made were the right moves for the team, and then they just got really snake bitten here with injuries. I mean, six players of our normal 18 skaters are out. They're playing.
I can't see too good. Is that Vic Fangio and the Broncos I'm talking to? Is that
his spiel?
2 years in a row now. Oh, the injuries, as if he's not the worst coach in the league, for 3 years running. It's injuries. They had the highest paid defense in the league, this year and for, basically the last 3 years. But, he lost a couple linebackers, so that's why they're terrible. That's why they lose to the Browns, who had I think I don't remember what the stats were. The Ravens had like 19 guys on injured reserve, and they just whipped the Broncos. But injuries, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this about the Golden Knights. Now, you talk about certain losses just look bad. Like the Avs lost to the Golden Knights when they were hyped. That was a bad look. Again, the Golden Knights lost in the next round with the Vezina finalist. That was bad. Our winner, eventual Vezina, winner is bad. But the Adam Hill loss that he's taken and just refuses to take it on the way out. There was a famous quote by the Nuggets coach Mike Malone, when Nuggets fans coming to the arena, and he says that's fine, or Lakers fans coming into the Nuggets arena, he goes, that's fine as long as they take the L on the way out. Adam Hill refuses to take the L on the way out over this stupid VGS thing. It's VGK. It's been VGK. That's what the city has demanded. ESPN hasn't shown hockey on TV basically for 18 years. They made a mistake. They were showing it as VGS on the graphics. They changed it immediately. There was such an uproar by the people. The people have spoken. They changed it immediately. And Adam Hill, because he was on such a wrong side of history, like somebody else, he's spreading the big lie of VGS, and he won't quit. It's unbelievable. What's going on? Can you talk some sense into him, Counselor?
I hope Adam's listening, because this is the only time you're going to hear me ever utter these words. But Adam Hill should actually take a victory lap on this one.
Oh, my good God.
You know why?
Because you guys are delusional?
VGS was how ESPN did it from the beginning. Brady's correct. They never put VGK. They always did VGS for whatever reason, right? So ESPN telecasts the opening night, puts VGS on their score sheet.
On television,
and the Golden Knights win, right? They correct it for all the score bugs after that. It's loss. And Adam Hill says, we need to go back to VGS. I'm going to put VGS. He will now refer to them in Twitter as VGS, and they're 2-0. So, Adam, good job. Thanks for the sacrifice, buddy.
He's responsible. He's responsible for the jinx to begin with, because he was jinxing them from the start. If he would have just kept his mouth shut and advocated for the right thing to begin with, you guys wouldn't have been in the mess to start.
Adam knows these things. He'll tell you the story of the gummy bears in year one. They stopped putting gummy bears in the press room, and all of a sudden we went on a losing streak. Got it up to upper management. They bring the gummy bears back. Start winning again.
It's funny. I was arguing with him on Twitter about it, and because Brady's in there, it's like, it's been VGS for 5 years on ESPN. Adam was saying on the website, and I said, Adam, nobody cares about that. I used to do the show when I'd be looking up Avs things. You know how hard it was to get to hockey scores when the NHL wasn't paying ESPN to go find. You'd have to scroll over because there's tabs on the ESPN
More
website.
Sports.
Yes, you go over to more sports. There's like cricket and boxing and curling. That's how buried NHL was. And so I don't care if it was VGS over there for the last 5 years. They weren't on television. The second was on television. The rest of the rational, sane universe said, no, this isn't right. But, just like a certain other person in this country, they keep saying something that's not true. It's called the big lie. Adam Hill is saying, no, what you're seeing isn't true. Don't believe what they're telling you. That ESPN corrected it within 24 hours, and he's spreading this big lie that it's VGS. It's not VGS. ESPN has corrected it.
You've got no ally in me with this, Dan.
Yes.
Adam deserves the victory lap. I hope he keeps the VGS going all year long on his personal Twitter. We're 2-0 since Adam rediscovered VGS and the victories that have followed.
Dan, would you like me to burst the bubble here? Because I like you yelling about it. You do realize what Adam's doing, right?
Poking the bear? I don't know.
Of course.
Being obnoxious?
Yes. Much of his existence, especially with the Knights, is the troll. Yeah. So he's loving what's happening right now with Fleury. He loves that fans got pissed off about VGS, so he's going to use VGS all season long just to stick it to him. So it's the game that he leads the way in the Vegas market, but several media people in this market, basically, they wake up to freaking irk the fans and elicit a response.
How can he do that? Isn't he a beat writer? Doesn't he cover them objectively as a member of a newspaper? Time honored profession. How is that possible, Steve?
Let me adjust my mic. I appreciate the heads up on that. You're right. I'm on my cam mic.
How's that better? So, the funny thing is, if you bring this up to Adam, that he's playing games and he's not being an objective reporter, he will effing melt down. He will. Justin,
if you troll him about being a troll while he's a beat writer, he'll melt down.
That's a great way to put it.
Absolutely.
If you troll him about
trolling, I don't troll anybody. Yeah.
If you troll him about being a troll, he will flip out. But there is everyone who watches this podcast, and I don't do it on the air because I don't want to call out his journalistic chops. Everyone knows that within the VGK realm that people picked aside Fleury and Leonard. And they're all going to continue to run with it. And that's just the way it was. I don't have a side because I don't care. But we won't question Adam on his journalistic integrity. But there are certain things, yes, he's going to ride the fans, and he slipped today. I mean, I don't know if he slipped or not. He said it on the air today. He's like over the moon with the way Fleury has started.
Hey, our beat writer here. Oh, I guess I shouldn't say that because he works for the station. Well, it happened with Adam Schefter when he was working for the Broncos, writing books with the head coach, Mike Shanahan, because he just got
having Mike Shanahan approve his stories.
Right. And
by the way, the Schefter giving the freaking football team guy, Bruce Allen, his stories and saying, "Go ahead, Mr. Editor." It's not the only time he's done that. From what I'm hearing.
So. But then Dater, right? Because Patrick Waugh came back and coached for a little while. So they wrote a book, Saved by Waugh. He's covering the team and writing books. Mike Kliss now does it, who's the beat writer, head beat writer. Actually, this is funny. He's basically quasi Mike Kliss, who's kind of the head, the go-to insider. Got hired away from the Denver Post to the top two beat writers got hired away from the newspapers to work for TV stations. But the team brings him in to give lectures to the players. So they could not be more in bed now, but they're, quote, covering the teams. There was actually a funny thing that came out. He was so far in bed, this Mike Kliss guy, he was, putting out a story, and he thought he was sending it to the Broncos PR guy. And, Nikki Jabvala, who's now the Redskins beat writer, he thought he was sending it to Patrick Smythe, the vice president of PR. He says, "Don't confirm to Nikki," but he tweeted it out to the entire world.
Oh, no.
So,
that's awesome.
And so we just, forever we were just like, "Oh, thanks, Mike. Don't confirm to Nikki," things like that. So it's just not like it used to be, when we were coming up.
So to lead into our top legal story tonight, there's nothing I like more. And I don't know about Justin's world, but, Dan's in media enough that he understands this. There's nothing I love more than the media world and radio stations and newspapers and angst, right? Angst amongst coworkers and secrets and backstabbing and stories. And, so I don't know. I don't know what it's like with you attorneys, but maybe that's the case within your office or with other attorneys. Every time I ask Justin about an attorney, he's like, "Oh no, we're a very good person, very cool person." What's going on right now, and it goes back years. What's going on right now with the NFL and its owners and Goodell overseeing him, and Goodell's like, please stop, just get along, please. I have to go out in front of people and speak to a large audience. I don't know what to say. You guys have to stop fighting and breaking rank and threatening to sue each other. This is so freaking awesome. And so let's start out today. We did a lot on the Cofield and Company show today on Mark Davis and Dan Snyder and Goodell saying, "Oh, we're protecting the women." But we never got to one of the best stories, and it's going to be, I think, the most explosive one coming up, and that is Stan Kroenke pissing off a bunch of the owners because it looks like in this whole relocation thing, he agreed at the beginning of it that when there were legal challenges by St. Louis, right, his move to LA, that he would handle all the legal fees. And apparently in the last week or so, he's made it clear, Dan, to the other owners that he's like, I don't really feel like paying all those legal fees. I think we should all split them. And apparently, well, good, you clarify. I guess there were a couple like owners in the meeting were starting to flip out. Kroenke was told to leave the room. This is turning into like billionaire fist fight on the horizon. It's awesome.
Yeah, because it's not just legal fees. It was to totally indemnify the owners, because here's what they always want to do. This has been a fascinating case. They want to protect their books. They don't want to have to open up their books. It's like the famed movie Casino, based on the city you guys are sitting in, right? What happened to the nice old lady that was the partner with Green, right? There's a ruling at the commission. They says we have to open up the books, and that's not good. Well, Nikki Santoro pays a visit, right? Well, consistently, what has happened in this case is the judge says, I don't care that you guys are billionaires. You need to comply with this discovery process, and you need to open up your books. Several of these owners have not complied, and they've been fined, and they are going to have to open up the books. Now, the legal strategy was going to be maybe, well, Kroenke's just going to indemnify us. We're just going to admit fault and probably just run up to the judge and say, what's the damages? Is it 100 million? Is it 150 million? Let's just go straight to that part of the proceedings. And we're just not going to open up our books. So we'll do an end around fault and just, Kroenke, you agreed to take care of this. So you can have a cash cow out with your complex and everything out in LA, write the dang check. And, thinking it's going to be $120 million. Well, now they're thinking it's going to be $1 billion. And Kroenke's like, no, dude, I'm not writing a check for $1 billion. You got to understand, Kroenke is, now, if you put him and his wife together, they're worth close to 10 billion. But one, Kroenke's a cheap SOB. I mean, this is a guy who, a couple things that we've talked about before. He's from Missouri. He moved the NFL team out of his home state. He doesn't care about being a villain in his own home state to make money. That's how much he loves money. He's basically vilified in every city which he owns teams. He doesn't care about that. He loves money more. We're going into now our 4th season here in Denver with the Avs and Nuggets now not being on television. And this season, I did some reporting on that case. The judge has already said, I'm going to when it gets to a point in the proceedings where I'm allowed to dismiss it, I've dismissed as much as I can in the start of this case. I can't dismiss anymore. But when we get to that point in the case, more than likely, I'm going to dismiss the rest of your case. He's still pushing on in that lawsuit. He loves money. So I don't think he was ever even going to, indemnify them for 120 million. But now we're talking about $1 billion. He's going to give up a quarter of his worth. He's worth, by most estimates, 4.4 to maybe $5 billion. He's like, no, it's a classic Trump grinder technique. What are they going to do? The owners are going to get really, really mad, and they'll have to renegotiate, and he'll pay less than what he would have had to pay before, which was everything, right? Is he going to get away with? I'll let Justin's talk now. Is he going to get away with all of it? Just saying, walking away from the entire indemnification clause? I doubt it, but he's going to probably come to some resolution short of paying $1 billion or 100% of it. Justin?
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like you've done obviously a lot more investigation on this. I have had a lot of practical legal experience with indemnification clauses. Before I owned my own firm and did personal injury stuff, I did a lot of contractual stuff, and a lot of it centered around indemnity clauses, duties to defend, covers of attorney's fees and costs and litigation. And, without reading this one, I don't know. The other owners claim it's ironclad. They're pretty much in most states, there is an ability to get ironclad indemnity. And the good news about that is if you're one of the other owners and you say, well, he's not going to do it, and we're going to have to litigate this forever. Let's just all pony up a little bit now. The good news for the other owners is the way you interpret a contract is a matter of law for a judge to determine. So it's unlikely you would need to go years and years and years and years into a litigation before you got a ruling. I'm not saying he couldn't appeal the ruling. I'm not saying he couldn't stretch the ruling out. But I believe if he was unwilling to indemnify them fully, that they could get a ruling on the enforceability of the indemnification provision relatively quickly. And that's by legal standards. That means within 2 years. I mean, relatively quickly. And maybe even within a year, but I think probably not with the amount of attorneys that would be involved and the amount of money that's at stake. But if there are any cracks in there, the cracks would be if any liability in the court, in Missouri in the case, stems from the NFL's own actions, separate and apart from Kroenke's and the teams, then there could be an argument that Kroenke does not have to indemnify the NFL for its own portion of negligence. So if it were to go to verdict, there is the potential argument, and this can be an ironclad indemnity provision can prevent this in most states. There could be a situation in which his liability is diminished. But to Dan's point, rather than open the books, they're trying to get this thing resolved now, and they want to resolve it with Kroenke's money. And what you're not going to get is an agreement to indemnify and have it be ironclad if you're forcing settlement. That's not going to happen. So that's Kroenke's strongest position is, yeah, you guys want me to settle this, I'll split it with you guys. I'll but I'm not paying the whole boat, so you guys don't have to open your books.
Well, what he said today, or during that meeting, was I've done his argument so far has been, I've done everything I can to settle this thing. I've offered the moon. There was somebody throwing out a number, upwards of $1 billion, which I don't believe. I simply do not believe that Stan Kroenke offered $1 billion to the city of St. Louis. And what I'm guessing, I mean, what is St. Louis going to do with $1 billion? They want a team, right? I'm guessing they're going to walk away with a promise for a team the next time, and a ironclad promise that you guys are going to expand, and you're going to expand soon. You're getting all the gambling money that you're bragging about. Give us a team in the next 4 to 6 years. And there's so much pressure now. And if you could get a ruling quickly, but you're not, and not with this judge is ruling against them every step along the way. There's so much pressure for them to get things done now. He's not going to slow up his docket and wait for some other judge, or if an interlocutory appeal or whatever. He's going to keep his docket rolling. I mean, I guess he would have to wait for an interlocutory appeal, I guess, if they did that. But if I don't know if that part of it would fall under that. Probably wouldn't. But
I think it'd be a totally separate
lawsuit
in New York. Probably I'm sure jurisdiction would be based in New York.
Yeah. So it's funny. I saw it and I'm like, it's classic Stan Kroenke. And I think I've talked about this on this podcast. I know I've talked about it on my show. I've talked about with Kroenke, and I asked George Karl about it because we were playing golf. Like, what is this guy like? Like, what does this guy get out of life? Like, he doesn't want to be famous. Like, he's cheap, right? What makes him happy? Like he doesn't, he can vacation wherever he wants. He can buy whatever he wants, but he doesn't want to be on TV. He doesn't want to be famous. He doesn't seem to, want a legacy of being philanthropic. Like, I don't know what this guy enjoys. And it's like, how much is, he seems kind of miserable, or like Machiavellian. I don't know, man. But this does not surprise me. The fact that he doesn't care that the fans of his products hate him, he doesn't care. The fact that his teams here in Denver are not on TV for 4 seasons, he doesn't care. The fact that all of Europe hates him, he doesn't care. Like, the reason you own sports teams, you think you want the prestige or something like that. No. The dude's is cheap, the cheapest billionaire that I've heard of. You know, so I don't know, man. But when I saw this, I was just like, of course he did. Absolutely 100%. Of course he's going to renege on that. When I was seeing, I was reading these articles where that was going to be their strategy was, oh, they were just going to rely on Stan Kroenke indemnifying them for damages and they would just go straight to the penalty phase. I'm like, yeah, right. This is the cheapest dude. I think I've told this story, but years ago, we're out after a game. I'm rolling with the broadcast crew. We're going, jumping around for drinks. We go to his restaurant in the stadium. We're hanging with him for like 1 or 2 rounds. The bill's maybe $38. He's having a steak. I'm like, hey, this one's going to be on Stan. Nope. He doesn't even buy his own employees like $30 worth of drinks. That they don't make any money. He doesn't even pick up his own at his own. It's free to him. They got to whip out their credit cards, and pay for drinks. Like that's how cheap he is. It's just there's no way he's scratching out. Back then, when I was reading these articles, 120 million. Yeah, good luck. Stan Kroenke's that's a sound strategy. But what we didn't talk about was what I sent you, Steve. Apparently, in these meetings, Mark Davis is like, might I remind you? We were supposed to get our stadium, and you guys went with him instead.
Yep. And so there's so many great angles here. First of all, back to your St. Louis going to get a football team. Daniel Wallach, who's another great legal insider attorney, he went straight out today. He's like, they're getting a team. That's the only way they're going to resolve this is St. Louis will be promised a team. I find Kroenke so fascinating. I remember flipping out on the air, and this was way back, like 5 years ago. I could not believe that the NFL gave Kroenke the LA market and effed over Mark Davis. And as Brady mentioned earlier, one of the great things in all this is like the NFL backed down from Stan Kroenke and they've created this monster. So when I saw this today that he's like, nah, I'm not paying the fees. Like you created him. This is a league that voted to go with the Carson project and have the Raiders and Chargers. The recommendation was Raiders and Chargers will be in Carson, and Kroenke, they were so afraid of him that they wound up giving him the market and going with his plan. And in the end, I'm sure the rest of the owners have all been like, dude, we don't want owners paying for their stadium. You're effing our whole grand plan. Now, Vegas has kind of brought it back by giving over $1 billion with the roads included for the stadium deal. So they created this monster and Kroenke. And apparently, this is the other thing I find, and this goes back to the Snyder story. So they have this meeting, and I guess John Mara got up, and John Mara's like, he's a Giants owner. He's all pissed off about it. But apparently Kraft and Jerry Jones are like, you know what? Here's the positives. Let's back Stan Kroenke. And then you start thinking, Justin, like, doesn't this go to the Snyder thing where a lot of these owners are like, man, we better stick together and have everyone's back because if people start turning on each other, then the dirt's going to come out. And I mean, we know, who knows how long, the massage parlor, and who knows how, like that might be the littlest thing, no pun intended, but they're like the smallest thing that Kraft has to worry about. Who knows what Jerry Jones has to worry about getting out. So I think the play between all these owners is just, this is boffo, but you're seeing they want to protect each other for the most part. And, they get afraid when people get a little bit froggy and start threatening them.
Yep. No, I think that's right. And I think, Steve, the StreamYard does not have the Twitter comments now, so we can't see them on the feed. But if you, I'm watching on our Twitter too. So if you're commenting on Twitter, I signed on recently a couple minutes ago, so you can comment there, and I'll bring them up if they're good.
Right. But if
they're bad, then I'll just ignore them.
Yeah, the best spot to go to is YouTube or Facebook, and the comments do come through. But I know on Twitter for some reason the comments aren't coming through. So anything else on Kroenke, Dan?
No, I thought it was very funny. I am going to it's funny because the lawsuit on here with the Avs and Nuggets, I'm going to do a story on that, and maybe we could talk about that on a future podcast. We're just like, hey, we got the league MVP. Can't watch them, they were going to ask me to do some post-game shows and maybe do some writing, and I'm like, I can't watch them every night. What am I going to do? So
Dan, we talked about on the radio show today. We talked about Goodell coming out yesterday and saying, "Hey, I'm here to protect the women." You know, they wanted to be protected. So and people have just been flipping out about that. Justin said it was disgusting. Justin also suggested, and correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, but Justin also suggested that there could be problems coming down the road with lawsuits. There could be something from John Gruden based on what's going on now with the.
What do you mean could be? There is going to be something
Right.
coming from John Gruden.
But let's tell the audience. So based on the protection of Dan Snyder, there also could be lawsuits coming from the women. And Justin, you were saying like what that means is all these efforts to keep these emails and info under wraps. Eventually, like the court system is going to go to the NFL. Like we don't care what you agreed to in this case. Give us the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they may ultimately, I doubt this, but they may ultimately allow them to keep private or protected the results of their investigation, meaning their own impressions of what they've done. I'm sure they had an attorney to be a part of it, and they could be seen as attorney-client privilege. But the underlying evidence itself, let's just talk about the emails. The underlying 650,000 emails, they can't make that privilege because they told other people as part of the investigation, we're not going to create a written report and make it public. If those emails are relevant to a lawsuit that's brought, then simply said, they can subpoena it. They can get those emails. They can look at it and they can use it as they see fit. So, I mean, I see multiple different angles of how lawsuits can be created in which those emails will become relevant. I think the biggest one, the most damaging one, bigger than Gruden, bigger than Mark Davis, the most damaging one is the use of the images of the topless cheerleaders and sending them around and taking those photos under false pretenses. If we got an intention there to do so, and then they're spreading that around, that's a punitive act. That's an intentional act. It's punitive, and punitive damages vary depending on the wealth of the people who have done the wrong. And so that could be a huge, huge case. Timing wise, statute of limitations wise, you could have a problem there, depending on when they knew that those photos were taken and when they were distributed and but that's a potentially big one.
Here's my question, because you guys probably know more about this than me. I was like everybody else. The first email comes out, the thing about DeMaurice Smith, and Gruden opens up his mouth and goes, "Hey," it's like the guy goes, "Hey, I'm not racist. I have a black friend," right? So he says, "Hey, I'm not racist. I slammed Goodell too." And the league is like, "Oh, I thought it was like Goodell was like, oh, you want to play that game?" And the league starts releasing email after email until the Raiders have no choice. So everybody was operating under the assumption that the league is the one leaking the emails. And I think a lot of people still believe the league leaked the emails. And then we see the story that those emails were part of evidence discovery in a Daniel Snyder lawsuit, which makes me think this wasn't the league. So I don't know if you guys can shed light on it. I just don't understand, and maybe you guys know more. What the heck happened here? Why did this come out into the season like this? And do you guys know? I mean, do we know? Was it the league, or was it Snyder's camp, or was it, the other side in that lawsuit? Or who would have had access to that stuff? Like, it's all curious to me, and I wondered if you guys had more information hanging around there.
I don't think we actually know the answer to that question. I know one of the former employees, she came on the Fox News and said her theory was, former cheerleader, her theory was that it was Dan Snyder who was releasing the emails because it makes Bruce Allen look bad, and he wants to pass the buck on to Bruce Allen, make him the ringleader of the hostile work environment. But
why are you taking down Gruden? I mean, out of 640,000 emails, I'm sure you could.
That one doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, you would release ones that make Bruce Allen look bad, not John Gruden look terrible.
Yep, I'm with you.
I actually, just to speculate, I think there were a couple goals first of all, the timing of the first one was unbelievable. That Friday when the comments came out, when the email was out about DeMaurice Smith, he was also up for vote to continue as the head of the NFLPA. So, and I'll just say, I think Adam said this on the air. Adam Hill was saying, it might have been someone in the league who actually wanted DeMaurice Smith to keep the gig. I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe that, there are some people with the league who are like, hey, he's not really that great for the players. So let's make sure we send this out there and he's going to be guaranteed to get voted back in. But yeah, on the rest of it, I don't know. Obviously on the air, I've been pushing, and here I'll push it again. I still believe there's something in the league, and people can tell me there isn't, but I believe there are owners out there and something in the league that there's an Al Davis legacy. And if you get a chance to stick it to the Raiders and stick it to them, especially in October when you had the emails back in June and they could have gotten rid of them in June and gotten a whole new, coaching staff or a new coach, it just seems kind of sinister to me the way it came out and the timing of it.
Yeah, the NFL better be careful if they're going to say that they were not the source of the leaks. That through metadata can be proven, right? It can be proven whether or not that has been sent outside of your firewall, right? So they better be very careful in how they go about saying anything in that regard. For lawsuits, on the part of, the women, the victims of the, misconduct, doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter who leaked. It doesn't matter that the emails were ever leaked. The emails were going to be relevant to any of their causes of action at any time. That's part of the discovery. If the only thing I think is interesting is if Daniel Snyder is the source of the leak, then I don't think that anybody's got a cause of action against him because Bruce Allen did all this from his work email address. So it's not even a leak. They are Daniel Snyder's emails to do what he wants with. They're Washington football team property.
Oh, wow.
And if it sold out Bruce Allen or John Gruden or Roger Goodell or DeMaurice Smith or anybody else, it doesn't. He has no obligation to keep his property private. He can make his property public. And so I don't think that, I think any claim that existed against Daniel Snyder, if he was the source of the leak, would be much, much more difficult. Not impossible, because still, if he was doing it for the purpose, maybe he hates John Gruden, to get John Gruden fired, that still can be actionable. But you have to get a couple of layers deeper. If the NFL released it, and now you've got, victims that want to see the rest of the emails, you got the players and the Players Association that wants to see all the emails, and I think that they have a good basis to do so. Like I said on air today, if you're the Players Association, you said, you're talking about a hostile work environment. You're talking about unsafe working conditions, and that you've taken measures to correct this into the future, but you're not telling us on what basis you've made those decisions. How can we, number one, ensure that we have a safe working place to go to, and two, fairly collectively bargain when you're in a different bargaining position than we are? You have to give us access to those emails. And it would be a really interesting argument to hear what a judge would say in that regard. And I think anytime that there was a challenge to the CBA moving into the future, the players could say, hey, they're operating on a different set of facts than we are. They have a bunch of information they're not sharing with us. And so, yeah, of course, we're going to make some bad deals here and there. We don't know the whole story.
All right. I'm going to come out of left field on this one and go non-sports, but I think this is really fascinating because we have a judge, we have an attorney. Dan's also an attorney. I don't know if you guys followed this today, but in this Kyle Rittenhouse case, the judge apparently said that victim is too loaded, so he doesn't want the two people killed and another person wounded with that AR-15 weapon. He doesn't want them called victims, but he will let the lawyers call them rioters, looters, and arsonists. What?
Okay, so now
if one is prejudicial, how is the back end not prejudicial?
Okay, well, one, he's the defendant, so he's the one that you're trying to, you're protecting his rights. You're not protecting the rights of the the prosecution or the of the victims. They are, victims. So just to be clear, he the kid that was running around with during the riots
in Kenosha. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure who he was, but I saw that headline, and when the headline, I understand people are outraged, but as a judge and sometimes defense attorney, it used to be a full-time defense attorney and used to be a public defender. I know people don't understand it, but it is prejudicial. Um, I can certainly understand why you wouldn't call them victims. Uh, for example, I told a story. I was involved in. I got roped into. I told you a story, Steve, about the barbecue. I got pulled into this attempted murder trial, and the cops asked me about my brisket, right? But the one guy uh, tricked the guard at this gated community, barged through the front door of the house, starts beating the resident down. The guy the guy who lives at the house pulls a gun from his waistband and shoots the guy. Right now, if you're a juror and the prosecutor is constantly referring to the guy that got through the guard shack, burst through the front door, and is beating the homeowner to the ground, if you're referring that to as the victim, well, as a juror, what are you going to do? You're going to emote that guy as a victim. You're going to consciously or subconsciously be pulled into a certain direction. And so our standard is, not guilty until proven by a reasonable doubt, right? Beyond all reasonable doubt. So I understand, if we all feel a certain way having read what we read about this. The facts that I read about this guy, I don't like what happened there. But in the court, for jurors to look at it, they're supposed to be impartial. And we have rules of evidence we have to follow. I was doing the attempted murder trial. I did. The prosecutor says, Dan, I understand you want all possible evidence to be admitted, but that's not the way the system works. And I said, well, why not, Andrew? Don't you want to get to the truth? Isn't that why we're here? And so that's just, when you're doing, murder trials, there's all sorts of crazy rulings that, don't make sense to people. Oftentimes they don't make sense to me, but it was not a surprise to me at all when I hear a judge say something like that, because it's extremely prejudicial.
I don't think I disagree with you on this one, only because the lawyers are not bound to be impartial. The judge is bound to be impartial. The person who's prosecuting it can and should be able to call them victims, because that's the story they're telling. They're asking the jury to believe that side is the victim based on the evidence. And there's nothing to stop the defense attorney from characterizing those people as rioters, looters, and thieves, because that's the story he's trying to convince. There is no obligation on the part of the attorneys.
I hate to stop you. It's not true. I've actually been held in contempt of court one time. You want to know why that is, Justin? Because in that same trial, I kept referring to my client by his first name, and I got called to the bench. And the judge says, Mr. Jacobs, I'm going to warn you. I've looked this up. There is case law on this. You cannot refer to Mr. Such and Such by his first name. It prejudices the jury, and it's inappropriate. And it was the exact opposite. It was making. I said, why can't I do that? This is ridiculous. I did it again. And I actually had a close relationship with this guy. I wasn't doing it to score brownie points. I kept referring to him as by his first name. And the fourth time I did it, she stopped the trial. She called me up. She held me in contempt. Because it was prejudicing the jury. You're right in that if I can get away with it within the rules of evidence and case law, I'm going to make every argument I can. But if the judge says that according to within the rules of evidence, you can't do it, you can't do it. Or if that says the way you're doing it, for example, you can't do something that is jury nullification. You can't make an argument you want to, but a judge is going to stop you. If their argument is,
but that doesn't flow with the ruling here. He's the judge is allowing one side to characterize the people who were shot, but not the other side.
Well,
so if it's prejudicial to call him a victim, then it's just as prejudicial to call him a rioter. You're characterizing, right?
Well, the judge is saying the defendant has his constitutional right.
Well, no.
Who are you prejudicing?
You're prejudicing the prosecution.
Is the prosecution on trial?
No, but you're talking about that. There is no the obligation is not to be impartial to the defendant. It's to be impartial to the jury. That's what your rulings are about. Is, hey, it's prejudicial to the jury's interpretation of what's going on for you to call him by his first name, right? Just like it would be prejudicial if I called him as the prosecutor, hey, Mr. Killer over there, Attorney Dan's calling him Jim, but I'm going to call him Mr. Killer because he's a murderer. The court's not going to let me do that either, right? So you weren't prejudicing your client's rights by calling him by first name, right? It had nothing to do with his constitutional rights. You were doing him a favor, but the court thought it was prejudicial and unfair and confusing to the jury. And my argument here is that's the same thing. You either let both sides characterize who was shot, how they think fits into their narrative of what facts they're arguing to the jury existed, or you don't let any of that happen. But you can't say, no, you can't call him these people who were shot victims, but you can call them this.
One infers guilt to the defendant, and the other one doesn't. That's the way it is.
When you called your client by first name, how did that infer guilt, and how did it not?
Well, I disagreed with it, but but here in this instance,
that's the situation we're in, right?
In this instance,
yeah,
calling them victims, in some sense, infers guilt on the defendant.
Right.
Part of his defense is unquestionably going to say, I was in self-defense. They were writing. This thing's going on. So he's going to say, I'm going to be further prejudiced if you don't allow me to characterize these people according to what they were doing.
Sure.
I don't like it. But
it
doesn't. But calling them that doesn't infer guilt upon the defendant, right?
No, it infers innocence on the defendant.
Right. One infers. Yeah, right.
But me saying that he intentionally murdered the people infers guilt on them too. But that's what I believe happened. And I'm prosecuting him for murder. And the only way
there's no rule of evidence that says you can't do that. Right.
But there's no legal standard out there that says when somebody commits a crime and they are on trial that you can't call the victim of the crime the victim. Like that. That's it. I mean, how many criminal trials have you done? They call them the victim. What else are you supposed to call them?
Well, because in this case, self-defense is an issue.
Self-defense is always an issue.
No, it's not. It's not always an issue.
I'm assuming if you're getting your way to trial, a lot of the times, especially on a murder case, there's going to be some self-defense issues. But the obligation of the court and its rulings is to be unbiased. It is not, and to protect, yes, there are constitutional rights to the fair trial, but fair doesn't mean one-sided. Fair trial doesn't mean you get all inferences your way. That's not what a fair trial is.
I guarantee you, if you were at all the sidebars, and you took score on how many the prosecution gets in this trial, and how many the defense gets in this trial, the biggest headline has gone to the defense. But if you take a scorecard of how many rulings the prosecution gets and go against the defense, I guarantee you it'll be 7 to 8 to 9 to 1 in favor of the prosecution.
You might want to check the scorecard of this judge. Okay. It's already out there.
Okay. Well, then it's highly unusual. Highly unusual.
Let me get you guys to react to this one. on Thursdays we lean on Xavier Pope, who's an attorney out of Chicago, and he tweeted this. That's hold on a second. Sorry, I'm making a comment. Oh, it's two parts. He said this should be immediately appealed. The victims are not on trial in the Rittenhouse case, and none of them were charged or convicted of a crime. The family should very well take action for the judge's defamatory actions.
I disagree on both those points. I mean, like Dan says, self-defense is an issue. I mean, he's absolutely going. I mean, his whole defense is going to be about what the actions of what I will say the victims of the shooting. I don't even think victims necessarily means that infers guilt or innocence to me. I mean, it just means who was the recipient of the shot. Okay. But absolutely what those people that were shot were doing is relevant to the action. Their actions are on trial. No doubt about it. I mean, this is an issue of self-defense. I mean, I don't agree, but that's his story.
Side note, Steve, leave us time for one issue at the end because Verville's on the comments, and I told him I would ask Watkins about one legal issue tonight because I was talking to him earlier in the week that I know Watkins knows the answer to.
All right. Dan, on Xavier's comments, what do you think?
Tweeted, this should be immediately appealed. The victims are not on trial in this case, and none of them are charged, convicted of a crime. You're going to stop the trial for, if I'm the prosecutors, I'm still feeling pretty good about my case. Yeah, I mean, it would take a long time. I mean, they would try and, it's similar. I mean, they would try and get a ruling back, within months, not years, but I'm feeling, I mean, this is not a slam dunk case. But if I'm prosecutors, I'm feeling pretty good about getting some sort of verdict in my favor. If I'm remembering, I'm back. Again, I haven't reread the article, but I did read what was going on in that case. It's going to be, the defense is going to have its hands full. They do have some good facts, going for them. But this is, if I'm the prosecutors, I don't know that I would stop the case to appeal this issue. I don't know that I would.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with the ruling, but I disagree with Xavier's arguments as to why the ruling is incorrect. It's certainly there's no defamatory action that you can bring against the judge.
I'm not saying
there's immunity there.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm not saying it was defamatory. And I'm not saying I don't know what. I'm sure when he issued his ruling in Wisconsin, he had whatever case law he thinks backs him up. And Justin knows how this is. An appeals court would work hard to, not overturn it. Maybe if they could. I'm not saying I agree with the ruling. I'm just saying I'm not surprised because that's how things happen sometimes in criminal court. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I don't agree with it. I haven't looked closely enough at it. But when I saw the headline, I wasn't surprised based on kind of the facts in that case and the volatility of that situation.
Dan, what was your question? Oh, God.
I was just going to say, Adam, now that you're on there in comments, you just missed the opening of this whole act. I defended you to Judge Dan. It's never going to happen again, but it happened and you weren't here for it. Sorry, buddy. So what was your question, Dan?
Oh, yeah. So Verville, who's in the comments, we were talking the other night, and it goes back to the Washington State thing. We were talking about masks, and he had actually, he's in Minnesota, and he said he was talking to a lawyer buddy of his, and he said, well, our firm hasn't gotten any of these cases yet. He said, but we will take them. If we get any, we will take them, the religious exemption cases. And I said, well, I don't know quite how that would work. I said, now my opinion is, and I said, but I'll ask Justin on this when we do the legal podcast. I said, but my understanding of this is, and I said, the Washington State code, there'll be at least one of them because I'm sure he'll sue on this, is you can't just say, you know, I created the Cofield and Company religion, and our religion is we don't get COVID vaccines. There's pretty solid case law on vaccines and religious preferences, and it has to be fairly demonstrable. It would be, is my understanding, and I could be wrong. So that's why I'm asking you on this, is that you have to be able to show, like, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses had a track record of saying when they were getting deferment, getting out of the draft, they could demonstrate, yes, this is a bona fide religious practice of ours. And it didn't just pop up, now that we don't like COVID vaccines, right? Like,
Yep.
if you went back and said, well, we never took this vaccine or that vaccine or whatever, so that these would be tough. But I told Andy, I said, Watkins, I think, is a lot more, could go a lot more in depth on this. And he was, every time we've talked about it, you felt very firm that these things would be, upheld. But apparently this other guy's firm said, oh, we would love to get our hands on one of these cases. So I said I would ask you about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, God bless him, I guess, if he wants to put his business practice on that. But yeah, your instincts and your memory of it all is right on point. It has to be, I believe the legal standard is something along the lines of a strongly held tenet of a sincerely practiced religion, something very close to that. Not only does it have to be a viable religion that you sincerely practice, but it has to be not just part of that religion, but it has to be a strong and important tenet of that religion in order to arise to the level of requiring these sort of exemptions. That's obviously what's a little bit, I'm sure it was part of the reason why, Washington State University looked at the religious exemption on behalf of the 4 coaches who were all Catholic, or were filed. Actually, I don't know that all 4 were Catholic, and looked at it and said, "This isn't part of Catholicism. The Pope himself has been vaccinated, denied, and sent it off and made it an easy denial." But I'm saying that all with zero knowledge as to what their screening process looked like, other than I know this. The screening process was a committee that was formed of multiple individuals that reviewed it under a double-blind system, meaning when they reviewed the application of the person was referred as a number and not a name. And so they were unaware of whose application specifically they were accepting or denying, which sounds like a pretty damn good system to me. But that doesn't mean that the factors that they considered were necessarily good. I don't know that. I would have to know kind of what their scorecard was and what their threshold for granting and denying these applications were to feel super confident that they'd done everything that they needed to do to provide due process for religious constitutional rights in the mandate. But I just don't think that they would. I don't think it was a sincere request for exemption in the first place. If he's a practicing Catholic, that's the end of the analysis for me.
Let's close on this, Dan. First of all, it seemed like you were in Hawaii for like a month. How long were you there for?
No, it was like 8 days, which, by the way, I was surprised. You and I had shot some stuff back. You seem like you've been to Hawaii quite a bit. Like you had quite a bit of knowledge. You've gone there quite a bit.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, Steve.
I've been to I guess Honolulu like 3 times, and I went to Maui.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's
I go every year.
But 3 times. Yeah, I mean, Justin's been there a bunch. 2 of the times were actually with UNLV on a football and a basketball trip. And the basketball trip was a long trip. It was like 6 days. So, I mean, I know a little bit about it.
All right. Well, by the way, a side note, our star hometown athlete wound up he was a quarterback, and he went and played at Hawaii. Started a game as a freshman and then started a game as a sophomore. Lost, this was before June Jones. Lost his first 2 games, 162 to nothing.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. he does landscaping now. He didn't make it the big time.
So Dan did the whole foodie thing, and he was posting a bunch of different food items. So
Well, yeah,
Well,
so I got some props. Because the funny thing is, actually, there was these chips. I don't know if you guys had these. I was like, what are these? So, man, I just like, we were there. So there's like a 4-hour difference in time from, Colorado to there. So like the first or second night, we're still like way out of whack. So we think it's like really late at night. It was like 7:00. We're like, late night Walmart run. So we go to Walmart, and I don't have a picture of it here, but I put it on Twitter. And you go to Walmart, and you know how like printer cartridges or like, iPods, they're in like those little cases, you have to get like a special key from the cashier. Spam. The spam, each individual $2.92 can of spam was locked in one of those glass cases. You couldn't buy
Did you ask?
spam.
Did you ask? Like, what's the deal?
Well, they just love their spam. Well, first off, Honolulu, a lot of crime. Like my daughter's phone got stolen. We had to pay a ransom. We had to do like this.
What?
What?
Oh
What?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Don't yada 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 over that part.
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible because we literally
Ransom.
Yeah. It was like this covert mission. We had to jump off a plane, take a lift from the airport, go to like this shady homeless crack, meth park, do the exchange, take a lift back to the airport, go to security and leave. So we had to end up paying.
What's the ransom price for a phone?
Well, this old phone. So we paid $100, plus the
What?
lift. Yeah, I know. But it had all of our stuff on it, so
You can't you could it's an Apple product. You can remote wipe it, right?
yeah, we could have. Yeah. But she just that day she had all of her videos from the the sea turtle,
So how does that phone call go? They call you up and like, hey, we got our phone, $100. We'll get it back to you.
So
This should have started the show.
Listen,
That's shit.
I knew. Listen, I'm no dummy. I knew that the meth heads had it. So you can put the little message that pops up on the screen because I knew we were going to fly to the other island. So I just said, listen, $100, no questions asked, just call, because I was hoping that the drug addicts would just be like, yeah, $100. But I don't know why when apparently this is common. They get the phone, they shut it off right away, so they can't be tracked, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't call before we jumped on a plane to a different island. So I was like, dang it. So they call us 2 days later from the homeless shelter, and they're like, she was in, this girl's like 18, 19. She's like, oh, we got your phone. I'm like, yeah, I know. They got no car. Yeah, we, because we could see where they're at now, and like I said, I think it was a homeless shelter. So,
so you were doing a good deed.
Well, they weren't going to give. What do you think she was going to do? Do you think she was going to give us the phone without any money?
Yeah.
No, there was absolutely no chance. So it was, just there was stuff missing from the phone, guys. Like we didn't get everything back with the phone. They called because they turned it on, saw the message about the money, and they said, okay, we're going to get something out of it because they couldn't get into it and they couldn't sell it. And so they were like, okay, I mean, after several days, they're like, the only way we're going to get any money out of this is, the $100. So,
oh my God.
So yeah, Honolulu was, that was why. Yeah, there it is.
I don't know why is it flashing for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Jesus. All right.
But you notice like the chicken.
It's your extension cord.
Yeah, right.
Can you put some duct tape on it? It'll. But yeah, the chicken and the tuna, one shelf up. There's no, case.
No problem there.
But yeah, I like Andy. Andy says, "Well, judge, let you call them meth heads in court." But just the spam was protected. So, but I didn't have spam. I did get a very, expensive steak that first day, that first night.
Yeah.
But so that was nice with 30-day dried steak. But they had these in the Walmart run. You guys ever had these?
No. What are they?
Well,
One-
they're called 1-ton chips, but they're really, and here's what they look like. They're really like noodles, but they're really weird texture.
Hmm.
They're really heavy, but then they put like a little tiny bit of like something like maybe sugar or something, so they're kind of a little salty and sweet. So here's the funny part, though. I was like, I kind of, yeah. There's the
Sorry.
turkey. Yeah.
Is there a random turkey in Honolulu?
Oh, that was at the second resort, that because we were at a golf course.
Oh, okay.
You know what? There is random chickens. There's chickens everywhere, just running loose in the streets, everywhere.
Yeah.
But so I actually ordered some of these off Amazon. They got to our house by Thursday. Before and then I shipped some. You know, they got there first, but so I actually shipped some. So I got a whole stash of these. But then one thing I didn't really like the food there.
I found
Oh
that
my
to
God.
be the
All
truth
right. Something's
as
happening.
a woman. But when you talk
What is
about
going on here?
migraine,
Oops. My bad. Oh, stuff's going on. What's going on here? I don't know.
The technical genius. I will end with this. I didn't care for the food all that much. We didn't care for the food all that much. We don't like seafood, but I have a great appreciation for the culture of the Hawaiian people, because they really, more than anybody I've ever seen, appreciate good corned beef in their society. This is a $7 can of gas station corned beef.
Really?
Yes. I'm like, I got to take this home with me. Actually, I shipped this back to myself. I just got it today. I haven't opened it yet.
Nice.
And then actually, this comes in different flavors, but it's all sold out. I was looking on Amazon today. You can get this in chili flavor. Now, this is not hash. This is just corned beef with juices. Sounds
awesome.
lovely.
Love the juice.
Yeah, you can get it in chili flavor, onion flavor, or garlic flavor. So it's pretty impressive. I can't wait to crack this open, see what we can do with this.
God, I wish I was there. Yeah, it's funny, Justin, when Dan says like you know a lot about Hawaii. Like I really don't, but I mean one of the most simple things was he put up a picture of this, and I was like, oh yeah, Loco Moco, and he's like, he's like, oh, you know a lot about Hawaii. You know how many Hawaiian food joints, Dan, we have here in town? There are a ton of transplanted Hawaiians, and we are called the Ninth Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Loco Moco anywhere, like Born and Raised has really good Loco Moco. There's Hawaiian places that have it, but that's
disgusting.
Actually that was bad.
That was disgusting because the meat. I got beef.
Oh no!
And the beef was just not good there. They don't have beef, they don't
like just ground beef.
Well, that was supposed to be a hamburger patty, and it was kind of like I don't know, like a meatloaf. It was like a frozen. It was disgusting.
Okay.
The best thing I had, if you could find it, Steve, on my Twitter, is at the airport. They had corned beef hash with eggs and fried rice, and that was good too. That was from a joint. More corned beef hash. That was corned beef hash. I had corned beef hash like twice.
You know, you're not in Hawaii for beef. That's not their
corned beef. Corned beef.
Yeah.
Pork,
I'm so
little pork,
out of it.
Pork.
I don't even know what makes corned beef corned. And
it's salted.
Gross, so I just don't eat it.
It's brined and salted.
That's the pain. It's not
that's
joke,
what it is.
It's not funny.
I'm getting like an auto ad from this is on Dan's page too. Dan, you got to get this out of here. Promoted tweet is for Nurtec, and it's freaking Whoopi Goldberg going crazy over some drug.
I love Whoopi. So what do you eat when you're there, Justin?
I love seafood. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. First of all, I mentioned Kahlua pork. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I noticed about Honolulu, especially Waikiki, is it's almost like the Strip.
Yeah.
Like it's so commercialized now that you kind of have to find the hidden gems, and there's still some hidden gems in Honolulu. And the stuff I enjoyed the most was actually most of the Asian food and Japanese food, and a lot of good soups and stuff. So. But it's funny you say how dangerous it is. Every town I go to, I will go bar crawl or like go to dive bars. I just look up places and I will take an Uber or whatever, Lyft out to like, and I don't really know where I'm going. I don't really know the neighborhood, so I might get dropped in a neighborhood where I'm like, okay. But I went to some like older parts of Honolulu, and I just walked around. I didn't walk around late night, but I would walk around day and then into dusk. And I kind of had head on a swivel, but I didn't realize like the crime was that high. I guess I ignored what's going on Dog the Bounty Hunter, so I didn't think I was in those neighborhoods with the what the hell was it? What does he always call meth? Is it ice? Ice? Is that what he's
Ice,
calling
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
But I didn't realize the crime was that bad. So I guess next time I go, I'll be a little more careful.
Yeah. But it was crazy. So
There we go.
you go to the other islands and it's
How
beautiful.
are the chicken fingers in Hawaii? Sorry, Dan. Go ahead. Sorry, that cracked me up.
Well, no,
Katsu chicken, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they're chicken fingers.
Yep.
Yeah, but you go to the other islands and it's completely different worlds. Like this, there's really just natural and different landscapes. It was just beautiful.
I don't want that.
I'm a Big Island fan. The Big Island's the best.
Yeah,
that's
that's where we went.
Yeah.
Where do you go there?
Well, there's this little mountain town that it's not really a tourist destination, but it's like one of my favorite places, Waimea. It's up in the mountains, and it's like the ranch community, like horses and cows and all that stuff up in the mountains that bridges between the two volcanoes from the Kona side to the Hilo side. And it's got to be one of the most beautiful little towns that ever existed. It's a cool little place. But you still see the ocean and all of that. So I like that. I like going to see the volcanoes. That's cool. And then on the Hilo side, they have this really big deal sort of Friday farmers market that gets a little crazy. And then last time we were up there, when you get up near the volcanoes, they have a lot of the protesters who are claiming independence on behalf of the Hawaiian people. And we hung with them, heard their stories, heard what they're talking about, and got involved in that a little bit. So it's a different pace on the Big Island, way different pace, way slower.
I almost picked up a sense though that it was like, Steve was like, well, where do you like to go? And Watkins is like, we have a compound. Like you're not getting in there, Steve.
Oh no!
It's
I would love to.
A couple of us have
yeah.
We have a mansion. You need a code to get in the gate. Don't worry about it, Cofield.
No, I wish I would definitely get a place in the Big Island. I love the Big Island.
Well, the crazy thing in Honolulu and even over in like Hilo, the real estate is like, especially in Oahu, it was like you go to we did the Shaka Guide tour in the car, and it's like we'd stop at these beautiful overlooks and just dumpy, crappy, dilapidated houses. And you're like, anywhere else in the world, that house is 1.1 million, but it's got a car on blocks there, and that the fascia's falling off. Like, how is this possible? And somebody was saying, well, they had to give some of Native Hawaiians have had to they had to give away so much land. I guess you're entitled to property, but it's amazing, like how property is relatively oceanfront overlook property is like cheap or relatively cheap,
depending on who you're willing to have your neighbors be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, guys, that was awesome. Good job. Thanks for watching tonight. Appreciate it. Low on Sporter, and we'll have this up on
no,
Spotify.
it's just
there you go. I think I was fine. All right, guys.
Thank you. Back